You ever notice how people only pay attention when it's already too late? They scroll, they swipe, they laugh, they ignore, convinced that life will always give them another chance, another reminder, another warning. But every now and then, something rare slips through the noise, something that was never meant for everyone. Just the ones who can actually hear, the ones who don't pretend to be awake, but actually are. And that's what this is. A message that doesn't repeat, doesn't beg, doesn't chase. It appears once, quietly, almost like it's testing you, watching if you're part of that tiny, stubborn 3% who actually listen, who don't brush off the discomfort, who don't hide behind excuses and distractions. Most people will skip this. They always do. They think they're in control. They think life waits for them. But a very small number, just a sliver, will feel that pull in their chest, that sharp little whisper telling them this is different, this is meant for them, this is the moment that doesn't come back. You ever notice how people walk through life like they've been promised 1,000 second chances? Like time is some obedient little pet that always comes back when they whistle. They skip messages, skip warnings, skip moments that were designed to shake them awake, and then they wonder why nothing changes. It's almost amusing, isn't it? This blind confidence that life will keep repeating itself until they're finally in the mood to pay attention. Most people move like that. 97% to be exact. They behave as if the universe is patient, as if opportunity waits politely at the door, tapping its foot while they get their excuses in order. They scroll through something meant for them and say, asterisk, I'll deal with it later, asterisk. Later becomes never, but everybody still convinces themselves they have time. They treat warnings like decorations, signals like suggestions, and opportunities like spam. What they don't realize is that the most important messages don't scream, they don't chase, they don't knock twice. They appear once quietly, almost casually, and watch what you do with them. That's the test. Not how smart you are, not how talented, just how awake. Most fail it without even knowing they were being tested. They think they skipped a video, ignored a thought, scrolled past a feeling. No, they skipped a door that doesn't reopen. Human beings are strange creatures. They'll suffer through years of discomfort, disappointment, even heartbreak. But ask them to pay attention for 10 seconds, and suddenly they're too busy. They'll cry about opportunities they never got, not realizing they walked right past them while looking for something flashier, louder, easier. The truth is, people don't lack opportunities. They lack awareness. The door was always there, just not in the shape they expected. And because it wasn't wrapped in fireworks, they dismissed it. You see, the rare ones, the 3%, they know something the rest don't. They understand that the universe doesn't waste energy repeating itself. When something shows up at the exact moment you need it, in the exact form you don't expect, that's the sign. That quiet tug inside your chest, that's the sign. That sudden jolt of discomfort, that's the sign. But most people are so wrapped in their distractions that the signs go unnoticed, like whispers in a storm. The 3% don't wait for perfect timing. They don't wait for motivation. They don't scroll past something that feels strangely specific. They recognize that the rarest messages are the ones that don't fit their comfort zone, the ones that make their heart skip for a second, the ones they can't forget even after they've put the phone down. They know that if something feels like it was meant for them, it probably was. And that tiny moment of recognition, that's enough for them to stop, lean in, and listen. Meanwhile, the other 97% keep living in this hypnotic loop, ignoring what's meant for them and chasing what destroys them. They beg for change, but run from the decisions that create it. They blame bad luck, bad timing, bad everything, except their own inattention. And that's the tragedy. Not that they don't get opportunities, but that they don't see them because they expect life to glow, shout, sparkle, or announce itself with applause. But life isn't a circus. It's quiet. It rewards the observant, not the impatient. It gives its best gifts to the ones who notice the smallest details, the ones who actually stop, pause, and say, asterisk, why did this appear right now? Why me? Why here? Asterisk, those are the questions that open doors. Those are the questions that separate the 3% from the rest. The message you're hearing right now, this moment, this interruption, this strange feeling that you shouldn't skip this is exactly the kind of thing most people ignore. They see it as random, as coincidence, as background noise, not realizing that the most life-altering truths often arrive disguised as something they almost scrolled past. That single act choosing not to ignore has changed more lives than any stroke of luck or miracle. And if you're still listening right now, if something in you is pulled forward instead of pushed away, if you feel that strange pressure in your mind telling you not to dismiss this like the rest, then maybe you're already separating yourself from the crowd. Maybe you're not one of them. Maybe you're the kind who doesn't depend on luck because awareness is your advantage. And that alone puts you in a category most people never reach. You ever wonder why certain moments make you uncomfortable? Like something inside you suddenly wakes up and starts pacing around. That little spark of unease, that shift in your chest, that tiny voice telling you, asterisk, pay attention, this matters, asterisk. Most people run from that feeling. They don't like discomfort. They think it means danger or embarrassment or effort. They assume anything that rattles them must be avoided. But that discomfort, that's the signal, the divider, the filter that separates the 3% who rise from the 97% who sleepwalk through life. People chase comfort like it's some holy prize. They want everything smooth, predictable, easy. They want warm feelings, soft truths, gentle reminders. They think growth should feel nice. But real growth, real change, it's messy, it's unsettling. It grabs you by the collar and forces you to see what you've been pretending not to notice. And most people, the majority, the crowd, they can't handle that. They want transformation without friction, purpose without struggle, evolution without discomfort. But that's not how anything meaningful works. The ones who listen, the rare ones, they don't run away when a message stings a little. They get curious. They lean into the discomfort. They ask themselves, asterisk, why did this hit me? Why did this feel personal? Why can't I look away? Asterisk, because they understand something important. Discomfort is not a threat. It's an invitation, a doorway, a moment when your old life and your potential collide. Most people feel that collision and immediately retreat. The 3% feel it and move closer. You can always tell who's who by how they react when truth gets too close. The majority distract themselves, scroll faster, laugh it off, pretend they didn't feel anything. They're experts at avoidance. They dodge anything that challenges their habits or exposes their excuses. They choose comfort over clarity every single time. And then they wonder why they're stuck in the same loop, year after year, repeating the same tired story. But the 3%, they understand that every life-changing message comes wrapped in discomfort. They don't expect truth to be soft. They don't assume purpose will be pleasant. They know that the universe doesn't whisper to people who aren't ready. It provokes them. It shakes them. It gives them a tiny shock to snap them out of autopilot. And instead of running from that feeling, they examine it. They recognize it as a sign that something is shifting, that their life is being nudged in a direction they can't ignore. You've felt that before, haven't you? That moment when something feels too specific, too direct, too coincidental to dismiss. It unsettles you because it exposes what you've been avoiding. It holds up a mirror you weren't prepared for. And in that uncomfortable moment, you have two choices. Retreat like the majority, or lean in like the 3%. That choice determines everything. Discomfort is the compass that most people refuse to follow. They think it points toward danger, but it actually points toward evolution. It's the feeling you get right before you level up. It's the internal alarm that signals a shift, a chance, a message meant for you. But if you numb it, ignore it, swipe past it, you silence the very thing designed to guide you forward. And that's why so many people stay exactly where they are, comfortable but unfulfilled, safe but stagnant, alive but barely living. You see, comfort doesn't build anything. Comfort protects your present but destroys your future. Discomfort does the opposite. It disrupts your present but unlocks the future you keep fantasizing about. The 3% understand that. That's why they respond differently. They pay attention when something makes them uneasy. They listen harder when a message feels too real. They don't run from the truth just because it doesn't feel good. They recognize that anything that shakes them is trying to wake them. Imagine how many warnings, chances, signs, and breakthroughs people have ignored simply because they were uncomfortable. Imagine how many opportunities they've lost because the first feeling wasn't pleasant. Imagine how much purpose has slipped through their fingers because they chose comfort over awareness. That's the tragedy of the 97%. They think discomfort is the enemy when it's actually the doorway they've been begging for. And yet, here you are, reading, listening, feeling something you can't quite name. Maybe it's curiosity. Maybe it's tension. Maybe it's that subtle pull telling you not to scroll away, not this time. That feeling is the signal. That's the dividing line. That's the moment where most walk away and a rare few stay. And whether you realize it or not, your reaction to this discomfort is already telling you which side you're on. Courage. People treat it like some rare ingredient they're supposed to already have stored somewhere inside them. They think it's a natural resource, like some people are simply born with buckets of it, while everyone else is left wandering around waiting for a miracle. They sit and wait for the right feeling, the perfect moment, the magical burst of bravery that will suddenly make everything easy. But that's the trick, isn't it? Courage doesn't show up times before times you move. It shows up times because times you moved. Most people never learn that. They sit in silence, motionless, convincing themselves they're just not ready yet, when the truth is, readiness is created, not found. The world is full of people who could have become something powerful if only they hadn't waited for courage to tap them on the shoulder. They wait for confidence before they speak, certainty before they try, clarity before they begin. They wait for fear to disappear, as if fear is some obedient pet that can be trained to sit quietly in the corner. But fear doesn't shrink from waiting. Fear feeds on waiting. The longer you sit, the louder it gets. The longer you hesitate, the heavier it feels. Until the thing that once scared you a little starts to scare you completely, simply because you avoided it long enough for it to grow teeth. You ever notice how the first step is always the hardest? Not because it's big, but because it's time's first. Asterisk. That first inch forward is where every doubt, every excuse, every memory of failure comes crawling out, whispering in your ear, begging you to stay still. People think that means they're not brave enough. They think courage should erase fear, but the truth is almost laughable. Courage is born from the exact moment you move times despite time's fear. It's created in the clash. in the confrontation, in that sharp breath you take right before you do the thing your mind tried to talk you out of. Action rewires you. It tells your brain, asterisk, look, we survived. Look, we can do this, asterisk. It teaches your body that you don't fall apart just because you stepped into the unknown. The moment you act, fear loses its authority. It realizes you're not going to let it drive anymore. But people who never act never get to experience that shift. They stay prisoners of a fear that could have been defeated by a single step. Most people spend their lives mistaking fear for a stop sign. They feel that tightening in their chest and assume it's the universe telling them to turn back. But those who understand how life works, they see fear as a threshold. They feel the same heartbeat, the same nerves, the same doubt, but they walk anyway. And when they walk, something interesting happens. Fear begins to change shape. It stops being a wall and starts becoming a doorway that only opens when you approach it. Look around at anyone you admire, anyone who built something, anyone who transformed themselves, anyone who rose from nothing. None of them waited for courage. They acted first. They jumped before they felt ready. They stumbled, made mistakes, embarrassed themselves, and in that chaos, they discovered courage wasn't a gift. It was a consequence, a reward, a byproduct of choosing movement when fear was begging for silence. But the majority, they cling to comfort like it's a lifeline. They rehearse their dreams but never perform them. They talk about what they want while sitting in the same chair, repeating the same routine, living the same year on loop. They keep saying, asterisk, soon, one day, when I feel brave enough, when things calm down, asterisk. They don't realize that courage doesn't wait for them. It waits times on times them. You can tell a lot about a person by what they do when fear shows up. Some freeze, some flee, and some smirk because they've figured out the trick. They know fear is just the mind trying to protect you from growth by pretending growth is danger. They know the body reacts the same way to fear and excitement, so they choose to interpret the trembling as a sign that something important is about to happen. Action is the spark. Movement is the ignition. Courage is the flame that appears afterward. And once it appears, you start to feel like you can push further, climb higher, attempt bigger things, not because you stopped being afraid, but because you proved to yourself that fear doesn't get the final vote. And that tiny proof, that single moment where you moved when every voice in your head told you not to, that's how courage is born and reborn every time you refuse to wait for permission to begin. People love to preach about alignment, as if life is some neat little puzzle where every piece politely waits its turn and clicks perfectly into place. They think the stars will suddenly line up, the noise will fade, the path will glow, and some invisible hand will gently guide them toward their destiny. How adorable. They don't realize alignment isn't something the universe delivers. It's something times create by choosing direction when everything around you seems scattered. People wait for signs, for clarity, for certainty, clutching their doubts like blankets, hoping the world will tidy itself up before they make a move. But nothing aligns until times do. You've seen it. Someone sitting on the edge of a decision, waiting for the right moment. They stare at their chaos, hoping one day it'll magically organize itself. They want guarantees before they commit, results before effort, comfort before growth. They think alignment is a gift that drops from the sky if they behave patiently enough. The truth is far less gentle. Life stays messy until you decide who you're going to be inside the mess. The moment you choose direction, the moment you align your actions with your intention, The world starts shifting not because it's doing you favors, but because your focus becomes sharper than your fear. People assume alignment feels peaceful, serene, harmonious. They want the calm without the conflict. But real alignment often starts with discomfort. It begins when you confront the parts of yourself that have been pulling you in opposite directions. One piece wants comfort, another piece wants victory. One wants safety, another wants significance. It's a tug of war, and everyone's waiting for the rope to stop shaking before they make a move. But the rope only steadies when you pull with full force, when you decide which part of you deserves to lead. Alignment comes from choosing, not waiting. There's something fascinating about humans. They crave control but hate commitment. They want to steer the ship without picking a destination. They want straight paths while walking crooked. They want consistency without discipline. But alignment requires sacrifice, the sacrifice of excuses, the sacrifice of distractions, the sacrifice of the weaker version of you that keeps whispering, "We can do this later." And oh, how seductive later is. It's the most popular hiding place for wasted potential. But those who break out of that illusion understand the truth. You stop drifting the moment you stop lying to yourself about your intentions. People don't fail because they lack talent. They fail because they lack alignment between what they say and what they do. They talk about change while repeating patterns that sabotage it. They declare their goals and then surround themselves with habits, environments, and people that contradict those goals. They make promises to themselves and then watch those promises dissolve into procrastination. They think life is punishing them, when really, they're just out of alignment with the future they claim to want. But when a person finally snaps out of that trance, when they stop treating intention like a wish and start treating it like a direction, the shift is unmistakable. Suddenly, everything they do points forward. Their choices sharpen. Their energy concentrates. Their mind stops scattering itself across a dozen meaningless possibilities and locks onto one path with precision. And the world responds not magically, but predictably. Because when you move with alignment, your actions don't fight each other anymore. They build, they compound, they amplify. You ever notice how people who are aligned have a certain presence? Not arrogance, clarity. They walk differently. They speak differently. Their decisions seem effortless, not because life is easier for them, but because they're not carrying the weight of uncertainty. When you're aligned, doubts still whisper, fears still tap on your shoulder, but they don't get to steer. You've already chosen the direction, and everything inside you marches in that direction, whether it feels comfortable or not. Alignment is created in the small, invisible choices, the ones nobody sees but you. Waking up when you don't want to, staying committed when the excitement wears off, cutting off distractions that feel good but lead nowhere, saying no to habits that keep you small, saying yes to challenges that stretch you. It's not glamorous, it's not dramatic, it's not cinematic. But that's where real alignment is forged, in the quiet corners, where you choose your future over your impulses. And once alignment takes root, everything you touch begins to shift. Opportunities stop slipping through your fingers. Momentum starts to gather. The chaos around you doesn't disappear, but it stops owning you. You learn to walk straight through the noise without losing focus, because now every part of you is moving in the same direction, fueled by the same intention, driven by the same vision. And that's when life starts bending, not for you, but with you, as if it finally recognizes the version of you that refused to wait for alignment and chose to become aligned instead. People cling to comfort like it's some kind of sacred blanket, wrapping themselves in routines that keep them predictable, small, and safe. They think comfort protects them, as if safety is the same as stability. But here's the trick no one likes to admit. The things that feel safest are often the things quietly holding you hostage. Comfort has this sweet, innocent smile, the kind that distracts you while it slips chains around your ankles. You don't notice until you try to move, until you try to grow, until you try to leave. That's when you realize comfort wasn't a friend, it was a trap dressed like a warm hug. People don't lose because they aren't capable. They lose because they're too comfortable. They get used to the stale patterns, the repetitive days, the predictable choices. They crave the familiar because the familiar requires nothing from them. It doesn't demand courage. It doesn't expose weakness. It doesn't ask them to confront the truth of who they are versus who they pretend to be. And so they settle, repeating the same comfortable behaviors while complaining about the uncomfortable results. It's almost comedic watching someone curse the fire while refusing to leave the room that's filling with smoke. Every person has felt that pull from inside the one whispering that they're meant for more. A tug, a spark, a restlessness that says staying here is not an option. But that voice has to fight an opponent stronger than any external enemy. The seductive lie that says, you can stay where you are, you're doing fine. That's the line comfort uses to keep you obedient. Not great, not fulfilled, not powerful, just fine. And fine is the biggest coffin potential ever gets buried in. Fine is where dreams go to suffocate quietly. The strange thing is people know this. Deep down, they know comfort kills ambition. They know the life they want sits on the other side of inconvenience, uncertainty, and effort. But they cling to the soft pillow of complacency because stepping out of it feels like walking barefoot on broken glass. What they don't realize is that staying in it is worse. Comfort doesn't stay gentle. It hardens into regret. It becomes a weight. It whispers what-ifs into your ear at night. It reminds you that every day you stayed still was a day you could have been building the version of yourself you admire. When you get too comfortable, you stop questioning, you stop challenging, you stop imagining. You repeat yesterday because it's easier than inventing tomorrow. And that's the tragedy. People forget that the biggest breakthroughs in their lives never came from easy places. They came from chaos, from pressure, from moments where they had no choice but to push. It's in discomfort that you reinvent yourself. It's in discomfort that you discover discipline. It's in discomfort that you stop pretending and start becoming. But people avoid it as if discomfort is a monster instead of a doorway. Look closely at anyone who transformed their life, left a toxic relationship, built a business, changed their health, rewired their mind. You'll notice something undeniable. They didn't do it because they felt ready. They did it because they felt trapped. Something snapped, a realization that staying the same was more dangerous than changing. That's when comfort loses its grip. The moment you recognize that familiarity is costing you your future, you start to treat discomfort not as a punishment, but as a necessary path. It becomes the signal that you're moving somewhere worth going. Comfort keeps people asleep to their own potential. But the moment you step out of it, you wake up. Suddenly, your senses sharpen. Suddenly, your mind starts working again. You feel alive, alert, aware, not because life got easier, but because you stopped hiding from it. The discomfort you feared becomes the fuel you needed. The uncertainty you avoided becomes the space where your character forms. The hard choices become the proof that you're not just surviving, you're evolving. And you'll notice that once you break the spell of comfort, everything changes. You stop tolerating half-hearted efforts. You stop making excuses. You stop clinging to people, habits, and environments that keep you stagnant. You begin to demand more from yourself because now you've tasted what's possible when you step beyond the soft walls of your own limitations. That taste rewires you. It ruins you for mediocrity. Comfort will always try to pull you back, whispering that the unknown is too risky, too unstable, too much work. But once you've crossed that invisible threshold where discomfort becomes growth, you'll never fall for that trick again. You'll look at the familiar and recognize it for what it truly is, not a sanctuary, but a cage decorated with pillows. People love to act like time is some endless river, always flowing, always available, always offering another chance downstream. They behave as if life is generous, patient, gentle, as if there will always be another moment to try, to fix, to speak, to start. But time is the quietest thief you'll ever meet. It doesn't break the door. It doesn't make a sound. It just slips 1 second after another out of your pocket while you're too distracted to notice. And by the time you finally look down, the pile is gone. People don't fear death as much as they fear realizing they wasted their life. Yet ironically, they live in a way that guarantees exactly that. Every person hears that inner warning times. You're running out of time. Asterisk. But most ignore it. Not because they don't believe it, but because they think they can negotiate. They convince themselves that the important things can wait, that dreams can wait, that self-respect, healing, discipline, ambition can all wait. They treat life like a long hallway with endless doors, each one offering another attempt. But some doors close permanently. Some chances don't return. Some people who love you won't always be there. Some opportunities won't come again once they've passed. And the cruel part? You rarely know which moment is the last one until it's already behind you. People waste years on people who don't value them, places that drain them, habits that bury them, not because they enjoy it, but because it's easy, familiar, convenient. They tell themselves it's not that bad, and that's the poison. Not that bad is the reason people stay in lives they quietly resent. They underestimate how quickly not that bad becomes too late. Time is not a threat. It's a countdown. But most won't admit that. They pretend tomorrow is guaranteed, like it's some item they already purchased. They schedule their greatness for another day, their self-respect for another week, their purpose for another month. They think life will wait patiently for them to get their act together. But life is not patient. Life is a series of shifting moments, each one screaming for your attention, begging you to wake up before the curtain drops. If people truly understood time, they would live differently. They would speak more honestly. They would act more urgently. They would walk away from the wrong things faster and chase the right things harder. They would stop delaying the conversations that matter, the moves that matter, the changes that matter. They would stop pretending pain will fix itself, or dreams will grow by accident, or healing will magically appear without effort. But here's the twist that people never see coming. The moment you take time seriously, you stop fearing it. Once you accept that the clock is ticking, you start using it instead of wasting it. You begin to treat each choice like it matters, each day like it's expensive, each opportunity like it might not return. Suddenly you stop scrolling through your life like it's background noise. You start participating. You start moving with intention. You start saying no to the things that shrink you and yes to the things that stretch you. People always say they want a sign, a wake-up call, a divine warning. They want the sky to open up and shout at them. But time is already shouting. It shouts every morning you wake up tired of your own excuses. It shouts every night you lie in bed knowing you could have done more. It shouts every time you feel that sting of regret, that ache of potential left unexpressed. The world doesn't need to send you another sign. You're surrounded by them. You just keep pretending you're blind. There's a reason people get emotional when they think about their younger self. It's not nostalgia, it's grief. They're mourning all the years they wasted being afraid, distracted, uncertain, passive. They're mourning the version of themselves that believed they had unlimited time. But the truth is, the younger you was right about one thing. You times did times have time. You just didn't use it like it mattered. And maybe that's the real tragedy. Not that life is short, but that people spend most of it living like they'll get another one. They wait for the perfect moment, not realizing the perfect moment is simply the moment they decide to move. They wait for permission from people who don't care, approval from crowds that won't remember them, courage from a future self that can only exist if they act now. Time isn't warning you to scare you, it's warning you to wake you, to make you realize that every second you hesitate is a second taken from the life you could have built. Each moment you waste is a promise broken to the person you're capable of becoming. Time isn't the enemy. Time is the announcer, calling out the rounds, reminding you that the fight is happening whether you swing or stand still.